Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a technological revolution that is actively rewriting the rules of an entire continent. We're exploring the massive rollout of artificial intelligence across Latin America. We're going to look at the macroeconomics, public welfare systems, and even everyday customer service bots to uncover the massive efficiencies and the severe, often totally hidden risks that this technology brings to the table. So, let's dive right in with a question that might sound a little surprising. Can an algorithm actually be biased? It really challenges our basic assumption that machines are always neutral, objective, and, purely mathematical. We tend to think of algorithms as just simple calculators that are immune to the prejudices that cloud human judgment. But as we're about to see, the data tells a very different story, especially when those algorithms are deployed across incredibly diverse populations. Just picture a vast, interconnected map of a region literally standing on the absolute brink of an AI revolution. We're talking about a transformation that promises to alter just about everything. See, Latin America has experienced a massive surge in digital connectivity over the last decade. Smartphone penetration and internet access have hit unprecedented levels. And because of this rapid digitization, the region is now incredibly fertile ground for AI implementation. This rollout is going to fundamentally shift how millions of people earn a living, how governments manage their social safety nets, and even dictate the very languages these digital systems are actually allowed to think in. To make sense of all these moving parts, here's our roadmap for the explainer. First up, the Latin American AI boom. 2, the digital welfare state. 3, hidden algorithmic discrimination. 4, the multilingual AI blind spot. And finally, reclaiming technological sovereignty. All right, jumping into Section 1, the Latin American AI boom. Economic promise versus structural peril. Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast in the major economic outlooks right now. On one hand, the International Labor Organization has incredibly high hopes. They project that generative AI could augment and boost productivity for up to 17 million jobs in the region. Their research suggests AI could handle all those routine administrative tasks, freeing up workers to tackle more complex, creative problem solving. But then, on the other hand, the Inter-American Development Bank is sounding the alarm. They estimate that automation and robotics pose a high risk of actually replacing up to 70% of jobs in some Latin American countries. This isn't just a minor difference in the math. It highlights how AI is a massive double-edged sword. Its actual impact depends entirely on a country's existing infrastructure, their labor laws, and their social safety nets. But here's where it gets real: 40%. That is the sobering figure from the ILO, representing the percentage of the most disadvantaged workers in Brazil who will actually be able to benefit from AI. And this brings us to a major structural hurdle: the digital divide. Look, if a worker lacks access to high-speed internet, modern hardware, or just basic digital literacy, an AI productivity boom doesn't help them one bit. Actually, it just leaves them further behind while the rest of the economy accelerates. When advanced tools are only accessible to the folks who already have resources, this technology risks severely exacerbating the economic inequalities that are already there. That deep digital divide brings us right to Section 2, the digital welfare state, shifting power and dependency. We are basically entering the era of the Silicon Valley Consensus. Historically, Latin America lived through the Washington Consensus, which really pushed for state reduction and market expansion. Well, now we're seeing the digital equivalent. This new consensus involves agreements that quietly shift power away from local governments and hand it over to massive private tech entities. It creates this deep technological dependency. In practical terms, this means governments aren't just buying software anymore. They are signing massive cloud computing contracts, they're storing highly sensitive citizen data on foreign servers, and they're relying on proprietary algorithms that they aren't even legally allowed to audit. They become entirely dependent on corporate infrastructure from the global north and China just to run their own public services. This fear of dependency, it's actually not a new concept at all. Back in 1972, former Chilean President Salvador Allende gave a speech at a UN conference where he warned of this exact dynamic. According to our sources, his argument was that relying entirely on foreign technological models threatened to effectively recolonize the region by stripping away its economic autonomy. The sources draw a really direct line from Allende's historical warnings straight to today's digital landscape. The underlying concern here is that when a nation imports its core technology, it also inadvertently imports the priorities, the business models, and the cultural biases of the people who created it. Let's zoom in a bit for Section 3, hidden algorithmic discrimination, designing bias into the system. Just look at how absolutely devastating a biased algorithm can be when you apply it to social welfare. The notorious Dutch tax scandal makes this crystal clear. They had an algorithm that used nationality as a risk factor, which ended up wrongly accusing thousands of immigrant families of fraud. The human cost was unthinkable. Over 1,000 children were actually taken into foster care because of a machine's mathematical bias. Now take that risk and apply it to Latin America. Down in Salta, Argentina, the local government used an imported AI system to try and predict which teenagers from low-income areas were most likely to become pregnant. The algorithm looked at data points like zip codes and parental income, which effectively penalized poverty instead of providing targeted healthcare. Or look at Chile. They rolled out a child protection alert system called Alerta Niñez that was modeled using a database from New Zealand. But using a database from a high-income, totally distinct cultural setting means the algorithm is looking for risk factors that are completely out of sync with Chile's unique socioeconomic reality. The takeaway, when algorithms are designed without local representation and context, you are quite literally designing bias right into the system. But this bias isn't just a government problem. Section 4, the multilingual AI blind spot. Corporate chatbots and linguistic flaws. A 2024 study out of Brown University exposes a massive vulnerability right in our daily consumer tech. When users asked an AI to do something unsafe or unethical in English, the safety mechanisms caught it and filtered it out 99% of the time. Pretty good, right? But when they translated those exact same prompts into less common languages like Zulu or Gaelic, they completely bypassed the AI safety filters 79% of the time. This is a brilliant illustration of a critical flaw. AI models are primarily trained on oceans of English data. Because of that, the safety guardrails are incredibly robust in English, but they basically vanish into thin air the second you interact in another language. And for businesses operating globally, the stakes are just incredibly high here. Research shows that 76% of online shoppers prefer to buy in their native language because familiarity builds trust. But if an e-commerce company rolls out an AI customer service bot in Latin America without testing for regional nuances, they are in for a seriously rough ride. Spanish isn't just one monolithic language. If an AI is trained generically on datasets from Spain, it might default to using pronouns like vosotros. That is going to completely alienate a user in Mexico who expects ustedes, or a user in Argentina who uses vos. Missing these local idioms, cultural references, and pronoun roles just makes the AI sound robotic, disconnected, and ultimately frustrating. It completely shatters brand trust and turns into a massive customer service failure. So how on earth do we fix this sprawling issue? Section 5, Reclaiming Technological Sovereignty, the Path Forward. One potential solution that research highlights actually draws inspiration from regional philosophies. For instance, Bolivian leaders celebrate a concept that is literally embedded in their constitution, buen vivir, or vivir bien, which translates roughly to good living. The sources note that this framework emphasizes collective well-being, social harmony, and technological sovereignty way above mere corporate efficiency. It represents a totally different way of approaching modernization. It argues that technological progress isn't just automatically beneficial by default. Instead, frameworks like this suggest that new technologies have to be carefully evaluated to make sure they genuinely serve and uplift the community, rather than just extracting their data or replacing their labor. To actually make that vision a reality, though, we need some concrete steps. First, there has to be a massive push to invest in local digital public infrastructure and education so that these regions aren't solely reliant on imported code. We also need to demand transparent multilingual testing, using specialized software evaluation platforms like Genesio, so companies can actually prove their AI behaves ethically, safely, and accurately in regional dialects before it ever goes live. On top of that, there needs to be a proactive, inclusive social dialogue. Governments, tech companies, and labor unions need to sit at the same table to prepare the workforce for these shifts and to negotiate protections for workers whose jobs might be automated. Ultimately, the state needs to step up and act not just as a passive consumer of foreign tech, but as an active shaper of its own digital future. So, we'll leave you with this lingering question to ponder. Will AI serve the common good, or just encode our existing inequalities? Look, artificial intelligence is an unbelievably powerful tool. It has the immense potential to optimize our public systems, elevate customer experiences, and totally boost productivity. But the research makes it absolutely clear that without careful, localized oversight, without rigorous multilingual testing, and without robust social safety nets, this technology runs the risk of quietly deepening the economic and digital divides that already exist today. We really hope this explainer sparks your desire to dig deeper into who truly controls the digital future of our societies. Thanks so much for joining us, and remember, keep questioning the algorithms around you.